The billionaire came home early. The black maid teaching his son left him astonished. The front doors swung open with a low, thunderous sound that echoed through the marble foyer. Ethan Sterling had come home early. Rain dripped from his tailored coat as he loosened his tie, the weariness of another 10-hour flight clinging to his shoulders. He'd told no one he was returning. Not his assistants, not the staff, not even his driver. He needed silence. He needed to breathe inside his own walls again, if only for a night. But the mansion wasn't silent. As he passed the long corridor, faint laughter spilled out from the study, his son's laughter. Ethan froze. It had been months since he'd heard that sound in this house. He followed it, each step heavier than the last. He stopped at the doorway and leaned slightly in, and what he saw made his breath catch. There, seated on the carpet, was Liam, his 6-year-old son, laughing over a pile of books and paper airplanes. Beside him sat a woman he didn't recognize. Dark-skinned, graceful, her hair tied back in a loose bun, wearing the plain black and white uniform of the housekeeping staff. She was drawing on the page, her voice soft and melodic. "If you have 2 halves, Liam, how many make a whole?" she asked. 2. The boy shouted, eyes bright. "And 1/4 plus 3/4 makes 1. They finished together, laughing. Ethan's heart tightened. He hadn't seen his son so alive since before Emily died. He stepped closer, unnoticed. The woman's hand brushed against Liam's as she guided his pencil. Her smile was patient, her eyes kind. For the first time in years, Ethan Sterling, billionaire, widower, man of numbers and logic, stood still and felt something break quietly inside him. It wasn't anger. It was astonishment. He had hired a maid. But what he saw in front of him was someone teaching his son to feel again. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's get into the story. Naomi Carter had always known struggle. Not the kind that asked for pity, the kind that carved resilience into your bones. She grew up in the south side of the city, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts at a hospital and taught her daughters one simple truth: no one owes you kindness. Give it anyway. Naomi learned early how to survive. When her mother fell sick, she dropped out of community college to care for her and her little sister, Layla. She cleaned houses, sold handmade crafts, tutored neighborhood kids. Anything that paid just enough to keep food on the table. When her mother passed away, Naomi promised Layla she'd find a way out of the cycle. But the city was unkind to dreamers with empty wallets. Months later, an acquaintance told her about a position at a mansion owned by one of the wealthiest men in the country. A man so rich and so private that even the people who worked for him barely saw his face. Naomi had laughed. "People like that don't hire people like me." "Maybe not," her friend replied, "but people like you deserve the chance." So she applied. And somehow he said yes. The Sterling estate was less a home and more a world unto itself. Sprawling lawns, fountains that sang, hallways that never seemed to end. The first time Naomi stepped through those doors, she felt like a trespasser. Everything gleamed, the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the silver-framed portraits. The housekeeper, Mrs. Alder, gave her a sharp once-over. "You'll start with the guest wing," she instructed, her voice brisk. "And keep to your duties. Mr. Sterling values privacy. We don't disturb him, and we don't," she hesitated, "interfere with his son unless instructed." Naomi nodded quickly. Understood. But her understanding would not last long. On her 3rd day, while dusting the piano room, Naomi heard a sound, faint and broken. A child's whimper. She followed it to the study. There, at a desk too big for him, sat Liam Sterling. Blonde hair tousled, tears streaking his cheeks as he stared at a math sheet full of fractions. Naomi hesitated. Staff weren't allowed to engage. But his small hands shook as he erased and rewrote the same answer again and again. She couldn't walk away. "Hey there," she said softly. "That looks tough." He jumped, startled. "You're not supposed to talk to me." "Who told you that?" "Mrs. Alder. And Daddy doesn't like strangers." Naomi smiled gently. "Then we'll be friends, not strangers." He blinked up at her, a flicker of curiosity through the sadness. "Do you know math?" "Enough to make it less scary," she replied, kneeling beside him. "Here, let me show you a trick." She drew a pie on a notepad and shaded half. "If I eat this much, what's left?" "Half." "Right. And if we eat both halves?" Liam giggled. "No pie left." "Exactly. That's what one whole means. See, math's not the enemy. Hunger is." For the first time, Liam laughed. From that day, the study became their world. When Naomi finished her duties, she'd quietly sneak in to help Liam with his homework. Sometimes they drew pictures of rockets and planets. Other times they read books aloud, his voice growing more confident each day. She discovered he was bright, just lonely. Every corner of that mansion echoed with absence. Of laughter, of music, of love. One evening Liam asked, "Miss Naomi, do you have a dad?" She smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart. But I had a mom who loved me enough for both." He nodded slowly. "My mom used to sing to me. Daddy doesn't like when I talk about her." Naomi's chest tightened. "Then we'll sing for her instead," she said softly. That night, their voices drifted through the halls, soft, off-key, full of warmth. The butlers paused to listen. Mrs. Alder frowned but said nothing. And far away, in an airport lounge, Ethan Sterling missed his son's first song in 3 years. By the second week, everyone had noticed. The boy who once hid behind locked doors was now running through the gardens, smiling. He ate full meals. He laughed. He asked questions. And always Naomi was near. Mrs. Alder grew suspicious. "You're spending too much time with the child," she warned. "This is not your role." Naomi bowed her head respectfully. "I know, ma'am. But sometimes he just needs someone to listen." Mrs. Alder sighed. "You're kind, Miss Carter. But kindness is rarely rewarded in this house." Naomi didn't answer. But when Liam asked her that evening, "Will you come tomorrow?" she only smiled and said, "Always." The change began like the first rays of dawn, small, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once it touched everything. Liam Sterling, once the quiet shadow of the mansion, was now the pulse of it. He ran through the gardens chasing butterflies, filled his room with paper rockets and watercolor paintings, and asked questions no one had the patience to answer before Naomi arrived. And though Ethan Sterling was continents away, buried in meetings and mergers, even he began to notice. His calls with the housekeeper grew shorter but more curious. "How's Liam?" he asked one evening from his office in London. Mrs. Alder paused, unsure how to describe it. "He's different, sir. Happier. The new maid seems to have a positive influence." "A maid?" Ethan's brows lifted. "Since when does a maid influence my son?" Mrs. Alder hesitated. "Since she started teaching him fractions with pies and science with songs, sir." For a moment, the billionaire said nothing. Then he murmured, "I see," before hanging up. He didn't yet realize those small acts of warmth were unraveling a wall 3 years in the making. Naomi had not planned to love the boy. She'd come for the paycheck, the stability, the promise that she and Layla could breathe again. But affection doesn't ask permission. It grows in the quiet moments, a child's laughter, a shared secret, the small hand that finds yours without thinking. Liam reminded her of what she'd lost, and of what she could still give. Each morning, she'd arrive with a plan, a story about stars, a math game, or a drawing lesson. Sometimes they read aloud beneath the grand window that faced the rose garden. When he stumbled over words, she'd gently guide him, whispering encouragement. When he succeeded, his grin was reward enough. And slowly, Naomi realized she wasn't just teaching him. He was teaching her too. He reminded her how to hope. One afternoon, Liam asked if they could paint. She hesitated. "I don't think your father would appreciate us making a mess in here." "Daddy's not here," he said simply, eyes twinkling. Naomi smiled despite herself. "All right, little rebel. But we'll keep it tidy." They spread newspapers across the carpet. Liam dipped a brush into blue paint, streaking the paper with chaotic joy. "What's that supposed to be?" Naomi teased. "It's the sky," he said proudly. "But it's sad because it lost the sun." Naomi's hand froze. The words hit deeper than they should have. "Why is it sad?" she asked quietly. "Because the sun went to heaven. Like Mommy." Her throat tightened. She reached for another brush, her voice soft. "Then maybe we can paint the sun coming back. Not all the way, just enough to make the sky smile again." Liam thought for a moment, then nodded. He added streaks of gold and orange, blending them into the blue until the picture glowed. Naomi looked at him, eyes shimmering. "Beautiful," she whispered. Later, when the paint dried, Liam proudly taped the picture to the study wall. He titled it, "When the Sun Came Back." Naomi's influence spread like perfume through the mansion. She greeted the cooks with warmth, helped the gardener water the hydrangeas, and even made Mrs. Alder laugh once, a sound so rare it startled the other maids. But not everyone was pleased. The senior butler, Mr. Collins, whispered to the staff that Naomi was getting too comfortable. "She forgets she's help," he muttered. "The master won't like it." Naomi heard the gossip but chose silence. She'd learned long ago that goodness doesn't need defense, it just needs consistency. A week later, the mansion prepared for Ethan Sterling's routine video call with his son. Naomi helped Liam tidy his desk and smooth his hair. He was nervous. "What if Daddy thinks I look silly?" "He won't," she said gently. "He'll be proud." When the screen flickered on, Ethan's face appeared. Sharp suit, tired eyes, a skyline glowing behind him. "Hey, champ," he said, his voice softer than Naomi expected. "Hi, Daddy." Liam grinned. "Look what I made." He held up the painting. Ethan blinked. "You painted that?" "Naomi helped me," Liam said proudly. "She's teaching me art and math and stories." Ethan frowned slightly. "Naomi?" "Yes." Liam's voice was full of excitement. "She's the best. She says math is like pie and that stars are like promises." Ethan's gaze shifted off-screen for a moment. "I see. That's very creative." Naomi, standing in the corner, felt the heat of his distant scrutiny even through the screen. She bowed her head politely when Liam turned the camera toward her. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. Ethan's tone was polite but measured. "You're the new maid." "Yes, sir. My son seems rather attached." Naomi hesitated. "He's a remarkable boy, sir. He just needed someone to listen." For a moment, Ethan's face softened, then his phone buzzed, and the moment ended. "Keep up the good work," he said shortly. "Good night, Liam." The call ended. Liam beamed anyway. Daddy smiled. "Did you see?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. I saw." But inside, she wondered who the man behind that polite smile really was, and what kind of pain could make a father so distant from a son who adored him. The days that followed felt lighter. Liam laughed more. Naomi sang softly while she worked. Even Mrs. Alder seemed less severe. And yet, something in the air was shifting. Naomi had begun to dream, not of riches but of permanence, of what it might mean to belong somewhere. But reality has a way of reminding you of your place. One evening, as Naomi folded linen in the laundry room, Mrs. Alder approached quietly. "Miss Carter," she began, her voice low but not unkind, "you've done wonders for that boy. I'll give you that. But Mr. Sterling, he's a complicated man. He values order, not attachment." Naomi paused. "I don't mean to overstep, ma'am. I only want Liam to be happy." "I know," Mrs. Alder sighed. "That's what worries me." 2 days later, Liam called Naomi to the garden. "I made something for you," he said, hands behind his back. She smiled. "For me? What is it?" He revealed a small clay figure, crooked, messy, but clearly meant to be two people holding hands. "That's you," he said, pointing to the taller figure. "And that's me. You're teaching me how to reach the stars." Naomi's throat tightened. "Liam, it's beautiful." He grinned. "Daddy says stars are too far. But you said we can still reach them if we dream big enough." She knelt, hugging him tightly. "You're going to reach them, I promise." Neither of them noticed Mrs. Alder standing by the veranda, watching silently, her expression unreadable. That night, Naomi sat by her window again, writing in her journal. "He's smiling again. The boy is healing. I don't know how long I'll be here, but for now, I'll keep teaching him to find light in the dark." The next morning, the staff buzzed with whispers. Mr. Sterling's business trip had been cut short. He was coming home tonight. Naomi's stomach tightened. She'd never met him in person, only seen his distant face through a screen. The thought of him walking through those doors filled her with both curiosity and dread. She tried to focus on her chores, but her hands trembled slightly as she arranged flowers in the foyer. By evening, the rain began to fall. Liam insisted on one more lesson before bedtime. "Just one story, Miss Naomi." She gave in easily. "All right, one more." They sat cross-legged on the study floor, surrounded by books and laughter. Naomi was mid-sentence, explaining how fractions could be found in music, when the sound of footsteps echoed in the hall. Firm, deliberate, unfamiliar. The door creaked open. And there he was. Ethan Sterling. Tall, striking, rain-soaked and weary, with eyes like sharpened glass, watching them both from the doorway. Naomi froze. Liam turned and gasped. "Daddy, you're home." Ethan's gaze moved from his son to the maid sitting beside him, holding a pencil and a half-finished drawing of stars. For a heartbeat, none of them spoke. Then, quietly, Ethan said, "What exactly is going on here?" The air in the study thickened with silence. Outside, rain drummed softly against the windowpane, the world holding its breath as 3 lives collided in one impossible moment. Naomi stood quickly, clutching the notebook to her chest. "Mr. Sterling," she stammered. I didn't realize you'd returned." Ethan Sterling's gaze didn't waver. He looked exhausted, not the kind of exhaustion sleep could fix, but the kind that came from years of holding everything together. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of authority that made empires rise and fall. "Clearly," he said, "what are you doing with my son?" Naomi hesitated, then glanced at Liam. The boy had run to his father, wrapping his small arms around his legs. "Daddy, Miss Naomi was just teaching me," he said, excitement bubbling through his voice. "She showed me how to do fractions and stories and—" "Enough, Liam." Ethan's tone was soft, but it stopped the boy mid-sentence. Naomi flinched. "Please, sir, he's telling the truth." he just needed help with. I didn't ask for an explanation. His words were sharp, clipped. You're here to clean, not to tutor. Naomi bit her lip, but didn't lower her gaze. With respect, sir, Liam needed someone. I didn't intend to overstep. Ethan took a step closer, studying her. This young woman with defiance flickering in her eyes like a hidden flame. Everyone in this house knows their role, he said. Including you. I know my role, she said quietly. But I also know when a child needs to be seen. That stopped him. For a second, just a second, something flickered in Ethan's expression. Regret, maybe. Guilt. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He straightened his coat. Mrs. Alder will speak with you about your conduct, he said. You may return to your duties. Liam's voice cracked. Daddy, please don't be mad at her. She's my friend. Ethan crouched to meet his son's eyes. We'll talk later, he said softly, his tone gentler now. Go to bed, champ. Liam hesitated, looking between them, confusion clouding his young face, before obeying, dragging his small feet toward the door. When he was gone, silence filled the study again. Only the rain spoke now. Naomi stood tall, though her hands trembled. If I've offended you, sir, I'm sorry. But I won't apologize for caring about your son. Ethan's jaw tightened. You think caring is enough? You think you understand him after a few weeks? I understand loneliness, she said. Her voice was soft but steady. And that boy has been drowning in it. Her words struck like a quiet thunderclap. Ethan's lips parted slightly as if to reply, but no words came. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him not as a billionaire, not as a man to be feared, but as a father who had failed. He turned away, pacing toward the window. His reflection blurred against the rain-streaked glass. You don't know what you're talking about, he said finally, though his tone had lost its edge. You don't know what we've been through. No, Naomi whispered. But I know what you're losing. That night, the house was unusually still. Naomi returned to her small room in the servants' quarters, her heart heavy. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the moonlight slicing through the curtains. She thought about quitting, packing her things, leaving before morning. But then she remembered Liam's laughter, his bright eyes, his small hand clutching hers as he painted the sky. She couldn't abandon him. Not when he was finally starting to live again. Meanwhile, Ethan sat alone in his private study, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. The house smelled faintly of lavender. Naomi's doing, he realized absently. She'd arranged flowers on the table earlier that week. He exhaled slowly, staring at his reflection in the glass doors. Who was she, really? This maid who spoke to him like no one else dared? Who dared to bring laughter back into rooms he'd long buried under silence? He pulled open a drawer, taking out an old photograph, Emily, his late wife, holding baby Liam. Her smile still pierced him. She'd have liked her, he murmured to the empty room. That maid. The next morning, Naomi entered the kitchen early, expecting frost from the staff, and she wasn't disappointed. Mrs. Alder's tone was cool. Mr. Sterling wishes to see you after breakfast. Naomi nodded, trying not to show her nerves. Yes, ma'am. When she carried the breakfast tray into the dining room, she nearly froze again. Ethan was already seated. Crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, reading the morning paper. Liam sat beside him, eating cereal, humming softly. Ethan glanced up as Naomi entered. His expression was unreadable. Good morning, Miss Carter. She set down the tray carefully. Good morning, sir. Liam looked up, beaming. Miss Naomi. Daddy said you can still stay. Naomi blinked. I what? Ethan folded his paper, sighing. I didn't say that exactly, Liam. But you didn't fire her, the boy insisted. You said we'd talk about it. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. Yes, I did say that. Naomi looked between them. Sir, if you want me to leave. I said we'd talk, he interrupted, his voice calmer than the night before. Sit. Naomi hesitated, then obeyed. For a moment, the three of them sat together at the long oak table. The billionaire, his son, and the maid. A strange sort of peace lingered there, fragile but real. Ethan studied her as she poured orange juice for Liam. Her movements careful, gentle. There was no pretense about her, no attempt to impress. Just sincerity, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Tell me, he said finally, why did you really take this job? Naomi looked up, meeting his eyes. Because I needed it, she said honestly. But I stayed because he needed me. Liam smiled proudly at that, as if she'd said something heroic. Ethan leaned back in his chair, observing her quietly. He'd built his entire life on logic and numbers, but there was something about this woman that defied both. Most people are careful around me, he said. You're not. Naomi's lips curved faintly. Most people don't see you as a man, sir. Just a myth with a bank account. That startled a low, genuine laugh from him, the first in years. Well, he said, I suppose that's accurate. Their conversation stretched longer than either expected. Ethan found himself asking questions about her past, her interests, her dreams. She spoke modestly, avoiding pity, her words painted with quiet resilience. When she mentioned her late mother, something in his chest tightened again. Loss recognized loss. Life has a cruel sense of humor, he murmured. It gives you everything, then takes the one thing you can't live without. Naomi looked at him, eyes soft with empathy. It also gives second chances, Mr. Sterling. Just not always the way we expect. Their gazes held, long enough for both to feel the faint spark of something neither dared name. Liam broke the moment with a laugh, spilling his juice. Naomi jumped up to clean it, and Ethan found himself watching her hands. Steady, gentle, alive. For a moment, he wondered what his house had sounded like before grief had swallowed it whole. And now, for the first time in years, he could almost hear it again. That evening, Naomi received a note slipped under her door. It was brief, written in elegant handwriting. Miss Carter, please join me in the study tomorrow at 7. We need to discuss Liam's education and your role in it. E. Sterling. Her heart pounded. Discuss my role. She barely slept, wondering what awaited her, dismissal, or something far more uncertain. When she entered the study the next evening, Ethan was standing by the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Mr. Sterling, she greeted softly. He turned, gesturing toward the chair opposite him. Sit. Naomi obeyed, folding her hands neatly on her lap. I owe you an apology, he began. I overreacted the other night. You were right about one thing. Liam needed someone to see him. Naomi's eyes widened slightly. Thank you, sir. He nodded. I spoke to his therapists, his teachers. They all said the same thing, he's changed. Happier. More focused. He paused. That's because of you. Her voice trembled. I only did what any decent person would. He smiled faintly. Decency is a rare currency these days. There was a long silence, the kind that hummed with unspoken emotions. Ethan's gaze softened. Stay. As his tutor officially. I'll increase your salary. Naomi's lips parted in surprise. Tutor. Sir, I don't have formal qualifications. I don't care about that, he interrupted gently. You've done more for him than any certified teacher. She exhaled, relief and disbelief flooding her all at once. Thank you. I won't let you down. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time saw not a maid, not an employee, but a woman whose kindness had begun to thaw the ice around his heart. I know you won't, he said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled again, but inside the mansion something else had begun to stir. Something warmer. Something human. In the weeks that followed, the Sterling mansion changed in ways subtle yet profound. Morning light no longer felt cold against its marble floors. Laughter, quiet, spontaneous, and pure, began to fill the rooms that had once echoed only with silence. Naomi's lessons with Liam became part of a new rhythm. They painted, read stories, and learned mathematics under the soft gaze of chandeliers. Sometimes, Ethan would pause at the study door just to listen, her laughter mixing with his son's like a melody he'd long forgotten. One afternoon, as he lingered unnoticed, Naomi's voice floated through the room. Remember, Liam, numbers don't lie, but they don't tell you everything either. Sometimes, you need your heart to finish the equation. Ethan smiled faintly. She's teaching him more than arithmetic, he thought. That evening, as Naomi was leaving the room, she caught him watching from the hall. You were listening, she said, trying to sound composed. Guilty, Ethan admitted. You have a way with words, Miss Carter. And you have a way of appearing without making a sound, she teased lightly. He chuckled. Hazard of being a man people stop talking around. Her expression softened. Maybe they're not afraid of you, sir. Maybe they just don't know how to reach you. The words lingered between them like perfume. Ethan didn't reply, but something in his eyes suggested she had reached him already. A few nights later, Naomi was in the music room dusting the old grand piano when Ethan entered quietly, a glass of wine in hand. I didn't know anyone used this room anymore, she said, startled. I used to, he replied. Emily played. She was brilliant. Naomi hesitated. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. It's all right, he said gently, setting the glass down. Do you play? She nodded. A little. My mother taught me. She used to say music makes pain beautiful. Would you? He asked, motioning toward the piano. Naomi hesitated, but something about his tone made refusal impossible. She sat, her fingers trembling slightly over the keys. Then she began to play. It was soft, imperfect, but full of soul. A slow, wistful melody that drifted through the air like a prayer. Ethan stood motionless, the sound pulling him somewhere far away. Back to warmth, laughter, a time before loss had hollowed him. When she stopped, the silence that followed was thick with emotion. That was... He began, searching for the right word. Beautiful. Naomi looked up, eyes shimmering in the dim light. Music can reach places words can't. He nodded slowly. You've been reaching a lot of those places lately. Her breath caught. For a moment, the space between them felt electric, intimate in a way neither dared name. Then Ethan cleared his throat, stepping back. Thank you for the music, he said softly, his voice rougher than usual. Good night, Naomi. The next morning, Naomi found herself called to the gate. A man stood there, shabby but familiar. Her older brother, Marcus. Naomi, he said in a low voice. You've been hard to find. She froze. Marcus, what are you doing here? He smiled bitterly. Looking out for my sister. I heard you're living large now, cleaning for the Billionaire. Don't start, she said, glancing nervously toward the security guards. Why are you really here? Because I need help, he said. I messed up. Again. Naomi's stomach dropped. She knew that tone. It meant debt, danger, and disappointment. Marcus, she whispered, I can't. Not here. Not with my job. Just a few thousand, he pressed. Please, Nye. You know I'll pay you back. She shook her head. I don't even have that kind of money. And if Mr. Sterling finds out, what? He'll fire you. Marcus scoffed. You think he cares about you? Naomi's heart twisted. Leave, Marcus. Please. He stared at her, then spat on the ground. You've changed. No, she said quietly. I've finally started to live right. He left without another word, and Naomi leaned against the gate, fighting tears. That evening, as Naomi was cleaning the study, Ethan entered suddenly. You had a visitor today, he said. His tone was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Naomi froze. You saw. I have cameras, Miss Carter, he said, not unkindly. Who was he? She swallowed hard. My brother. And he came here because... He's in trouble, she admitted. But I didn't give him anything. I swear. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's personal, she said. And I didn't want to lose your trust. His voice softened. Naomi, you have it. But when you hide things, you make it hard for me to protect you. She blinked. Protect me. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. There are people who watch this house, people who'd use anyone close to me for leverage. I can't let that happen to you or to Liam. Naomi felt her breath catch at his words. Close to me. It wasn't just a warning. It was an admission. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted to bring my world into yours. He smiled faintly. Maybe the problem is that you've already become part of mine. A few days later, heavy rain lashed the mansion. The storm knocked out power, plunging the estate into semi-darkness. Naomi rushed to check on Liam, finding him frightened in his room. Hey, it's all right, she soothed, sitting beside him. Thunder can't hurt you. When a particularly loud boom shook the window, she wrapped her arms around him, humming softly. Eventually, he fell asleep in her lap. Ethan entered quietly sometime later, flashlight in hand. The sight stopped him cold. Naomi cradling his son, her eyes half closed, humming an old lullaby. He stood there for a long time, heart full and breaking all at once. When she noticed him, she whispered, He finally fell asleep. Ethan nodded, setting the flashlight down. You're remarkable, you know that? She smiled faintly. I'm just doing my job. No, he said softly, stepping closer. You're doing more than that. You're healing us. Their eyes met in the dim light, his full of gratitude and something deeper, hers trembling with emotion she didn't dare name. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move away. For a heartbeat, the air between them pulsed. Fragile, sacred. Then Ethan stepped back, his jaw tight. Good night, Naomi. Good night, sir, she whispered. But neither of them slept that night. The next morning, Naomi received a letter. No return address, just her name in messy ink. She opened it hesitantly. Naomi, I told them where you work. I didn't mean to, but they forced me. They said they'd come for me if I didn't. Be careful. Marcus. Her hand shook. She knew what this meant. Her brother's debtors might come after her now, maybe even to the mansion. That evening, she approached Ethan in his office. Mr. Sterling, I have to tell you something. He looked up, instantly alert. What's wrong? She explained everything. The debts, the threats, the letter. By the end, she could barely speak. He was silent for a long moment, then stood. You're not going anywhere. Sir. No, he interrupted firmly. You and Liam are the only good things in this house right now. I'll handle it. But... Naomi, he said, voice softer now. Let me protect you this time." Her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said that to her before. Later that night, after the house had gone quiet, Naomi stood outside on the balcony, watching the storm clouds drift away. Ethan found her there. "You should be resting," he said gently. "I can't," she whispered. "Everything feels like it's falling apart again." He stepped beside her. "Not this time." She turned to face him, eyes glistening. "Why are you so kind to me?" He hesitated, then answered simply, "Because you've reminded me what it means to feel." She looked away, heart racing. "Ethan." He closed the distance between them, his voice barely a whisper. "You've brought light into this house, Naomi. Into me." A single tear slipped down her cheek. "And you've given me something I thought I'd lost: safety." Their hands brushed, a fleeting touch, electric and tender. The storm had passed, but in its wake, something new had been born. Fragile, forbidden, but undeniable. It was well past midnight when the storm returned. Wind howled across the Sterling estate, rattling windows and stirring branches against the tall glass walls. Naomi was in her room, half awake when she heard it, a sharp crack of glass breaking downstairs. Her heart jumped. She slipped from bed, pulling a sweater around her shoulders, and crept quietly down the corridor. The mansion, so vast and usually peaceful, now felt menacing. Shadows stretched long and unfamiliar. Then she saw movement. 2 men, black-clad, slipping through the side entrance with muffled steps. Her breath caught in her throat. They found me. Before she could retreat, a hand grabbed her from behind. She gasped, but it was Ethan, his finger pressed to his lips. "I heard it too," he whispered. "Stay behind me." Naomi's voice trembled. "It's them. They're after me." Ethan's jaw set like steel. "Not tonight." He led her to the panic room switch hidden behind a bookshelf. "Go inside and lock it. Stay with Liam." "What about you?" "I'll handle it." "Ethan." "Please," he said, eyes locking with hers. "Do this for me." The look in his eyes, fierce, protective, desperate, left her no room to argue. She ran upstairs, heart pounding, and slipped into Liam's room. The boy stirred as she entered. "Miss Naomi," he mumbled sleepily. "Sure, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling him close. "We're just playing a quiet game, okay?" Downstairs, muffled voices rose. Then a crash. Naomi clutched Liam tighter, fighting tears as fear and guilt twisted inside her. Then, footsteps. Heavy, hurried, coming up the stairs. The door burst open. Ethan appeared, breathing hard, a small bruise on his jaw but otherwise unhurt. "It's over," he said, voice low but steady. "Police are on their way." Naomi gasped in relief, rushing to him. "You could have been hurt." He gave a tired smile. "You think I'd let them touch either of you?" For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Her eyes wide with fear and gratitude, his soft with unspoken emotion. When Liam ran to hug him, Ethan bent down, wrapping both of them in his arms. For the first time in years, he wasn't protecting an empty house. He was protecting his family. Morning came slowly, pale and golden after the storm. The police had left. The intruders were in custody. One of them confessed easily. They'd been sent to send a message over Marcus's debts, but Ethan's security team had intercepted them in time. Naomi sat on the porch steps, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the sunrise paint the wet driveway in gold. Her world felt fragile but for the first time safe. Ethan joined her quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "Here," he said, offering one. "Thank you," she murmured. "For everything." He sat beside her, exhaling. "I should be the one thanking you. If you hadn't warned me, things could have gone much worse." She shook her head. I brought this danger here. He looked at her, his voice steady. No. You brought light here. The danger left with them. Naomi smiled faintly. You always know what to say. He smirked. That's not true. Most days I just improvise. They both laughed softly, the sound blending with the distant chirping of birds. The storm had cleansed more than the sky. It had washed away the walls between them. A few days later, Naomi received a visitor at the gate. Marcus, looking worn and repentant. I came to say sorry, he said quietly. They told me what happened. I never wanted to drag you into this. Tears welled in her eyes. You nearly got us killed, Marcus. I know, he said, voice breaking. But I'm done. I'm leaving the city, starting over. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you. He hugged her, tentative and trembling. Take care of yourself, Nye. You deserve good things. As he left, Naomi felt a bittersweet peace settle in her chest. The chapter of fear and family debt was closing, and something new was waiting. That evening, as dusk fell over the estate, Naomi stood in the garden. The flowers she'd planted weeks ago had begun to bloom, small, fragile bursts of color against the marble walls. Ethan found her there, sleeves rolled up, watching the horizon. You're leaving, he said quietly. She turned, startled. How did you? I saw the resignation letter, he said, stepping closer. Why? Her eyes shimmered. Because this isn't my world, Ethan. You and Liam. You deserve peace. I don't want to be the reason you lose it. He shook his head slowly. Peace doesn't mean anything without warmth. You gave us that. Naomi blinked back tears. Ethan. He took her hand, firm but gentle. When I came home that day, when I saw you teaching Liam, I thought you were overstepping. But now I know. You were saving us. Her lips trembled. You don't mean that. He smiled faintly. I do. You brought him laughter. You brought me life again. A tear slipped down her cheek. And you gave me something I'd stopped believing in, safety and love. Their eyes met, unguarded. The space between them felt impossibly small. Ethan brushed a tear from her face. Stay. Not as an employee. As part of our lives. She hesitated, then nodded, unable to fight the truth in her heart. Yes. He leaned in then, and when their lips met, it wasn't passion that burned first, it was peace. Years of loneliness dissolving in one quiet, perfect moment. The man who'd lost everything had finally found something he didn't know he was missing. 1 year later. The Sterling mansion was no longer silent. Laughter drifted from the study. Liam was now 10, taller, brighter, his artwork proudly taped across the walls. Ethan sat beside him, pretending to read while Naomi, now dressed in soft white, brought in lemonade and cookies. Outside, the garden Naomi had planted bloomed wildly, a riot of colors under the morning sun. Dad! Liam called. Miss Naomi says I can enter the city art contest. Can I? Ethan smiled. If she believes in you, so do I. Naomi leaned against the doorframe, watching them. Her family, her home. The journey had begun with fear, but it ended in love strong enough to outlast any storm. When Ethan crossed the room and took her hand, the same warmth she'd once brought to his house now filled her heart. I came home early once, he said softly, smiling at the memory, and found something I never expected. She smiled back, eyes bright with love. And what was that, Mr. Sterling? He brushed a kiss across her forehead. Hope. The camera of life would have panned back then, wide and golden, catching the three of them laughing together beneath the chandelier that once shimmered like frozen tears. Now it glowed like sunlight.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.